Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The transfer portal season is upon us, and we're taking a little deep dive into the Oklahoma Sooners and talking about some particular positions and players that Brent Venables and this program will be going after as that transfer portal opens up. And you look back to last year at this time, and Brent Venables was extremely aggressive in the transfer portal last year, bringing in 17 transfers. Guys like Andrew Anthony, Walter Ross, Rondell Bothroyd, dudes who made significant impacts on this Oklahoma team in 2023. And you look at the situation they're in now, yes, the roster looks much better. Do they need to go out and grab 20 transfers? Probably not, but there's no reason to think that Brent Venables isn't going to be getting aggressive in the transfer portal, continuing to try to revamp this roster as you move into the SEC. Extremely excited to get into this one. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys and a special shout out to the Oklahoma fans. This is a program y'all know I love talking about. We just talked about the offensive coordinator hire yesterday. You guys continue to show a ton of support, so can't thank you guys enough. And it's going to be a busy next couple of weeks for the Oklahoma Sooners, right? Not only are we bringing in an offensive coordinator, but we're also going to be getting aggressive in the transfer portal, going to be trying to break it all down for you guys. So again, if you do enjoy the content, you want to support the boys, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, I want to get into it. And you see the first name that I have on the screen, Evan Stewart. Hasn't hit the transfer portal yet, but it does sound like he will be a transfer portal candidate, as he did not travel with LSU to play in that last game for Texas A&M. And yes, there will be a lot of people saying, is Evan Stewart realistic to go to Oklahoma? And my answer to that would be, why not? Now, you take a look at Oklahoma and that offense they put out on the field in 2023. And if this offense looks anything similar under the next OC as it did under Jeff Lebby, you're looking at one of the most explosive offenses you've seen in the entire country, right? Putting up 42.3 points per game, number 2 scoring offense in the country. You're going to have a super talented quarterback in Jackson Arnold. You look at Evan Stewart. Yes, you're going to be going up against the likes of Alabama and Georgia, and everyone is going to want Evan Stewart. Why not Oklahoma? This is a blue blood premier program that's moving into the SEC and has an extremely attractive offense to come in and play. And the way I look at this Oklahoma wide receiver room, it's really loaded, right? In terms of the depth and young talent on the roster. You have Andrew Anthony back, Jalil Farouk, hopefully Jaden Gibson. It's talented. Is there that true number 1 wide receiver? I would argue that it's a vacant spot. And you have an Evan Stewart coming in. He could put up numbers like CeeDee Lamb or Marvin Mims or some of those real wide receiver ones for Oklahoma. I get it. There's going to be a lot of competition for Evan Stewart, but I wouldn't just rule Oklahoma out, because when I look at it, it looks like one of the most attractive spots for a true wide receiver 1 in the transfer portal. Evan Stewart, it seems like it'd be a pretty good fit to me. The next guy I want to talk about, and this is a little bit more of a off the beaten trail, but as a Big Ten fan, I've been following this kid, and you're losing a guy like Drake Stoops, who was phenomenal in the slot, meant so much to this Oklahoma offense. How about Deon Burks? This is a guy that under-recruited from the state of Michigan. And again, as a Michigan fan myself and watching a lot of Big Ten football, Purdue's offense was not very good. But when it was good, it was because Deon Burks had the football in his hand. This is a guy that can do special teams. This is a guy that's an elite slot receiver who's really, really good after the catch. Not many good things happen to this Purdue offense. If there was one good thing, it was Deon Burks. And I think he's a guy that's just looking to take that step up. Under-recruited out of high school, ends up going to Purdue. You have the coaching change. Had a phenomenal year in 2023. 47 catches, 630 yards, 7 touchdowns. I remind you, in an offense that absolutely stunk for most of the year, Deon Burks would come in and I think would be an immediate contributor in that slot wide receiver position. And that kind of brings us to the last guy in the wide receiver room that I want to talk about, and that's Raleek Brown. Just hitting the transfer portal the other night, committed to Oklahoma as a running back. You know DeMarco Murray. And this is kind of goes back to what we always talk about in this era of college football. Why I think Oklahoma is suited so well is they get intrigue from everyone across the country. You see how many top 5s and top 3s they make. They're throwing their hats into recruitments for almost every top player in the country. And even if you don't land those guys the first time around, there's a high chance you're going to get a second opportunity in the transfer portal to land the commitment. And if you don't burn your bridges and you keep those relationships, you're in a pretty good spot. And this is what I could see for Raleek Brown, a guy that was super talented coming out of Mater Dei as a running back, played primarily running back as a freshman. They wanted to transition him to that slot wide receiver position. And quite frankly, it didn't work. And at the end of the day, Raleek Brown could play slot wide receiver, could play running back. Any way you cut it, good things will happen when Raleek Brown has the football in his hands. And if Oklahoma wants to circle back on a guy like Raleek Brown, I trust DeMarco Murray in the new offensive coordinator to look at a guy like Raleek Brown and figure it out, because it's not that hard of a puzzle to put together. This is a guy that can be a difference maker on the offensive side of the ball, whether he's playing running back, whether he's playing wide receiver. Again, was formerly committed to Oklahoma. This would be a really cool addition into this Oklahoma offense, and just add another playmaker. And you look at this Oklahoma offense, it's predicated in space. Raleek Brown would fit right in, because this is a guy you want to get the football to in space. The next guy I have going to the offensive tackle position, and this is by far the hardest position to address in the transfer portal, and that's the offensive tackle. Why, you might ask? One, every team across the country wants an offensive tackle that can play at a high level in the transfer portal. And two, if you're good and you play offensive tackle, you're probably not leaving your previous school. I think Oklahoma got, not lucky, but Walter Rouse was kind of an exception. That Stanford program lost their head coach, kind of a lot of turmoil there. He hits the transfer portal, was phenomenal for Oklahoma. Zack Rice, an interesting guy, 5-star prospect out of the 2022 class, has not played very much for North Carolina after 2 years. He's a candidate, not in the transfer portal yet, but certainly could see him being in the transfer portal. Oklahoma had offered him coming out of high school. You're not going to get many opportunities to land an offensive tackle like Zack Rice. If he hits the portal and you want to build some depth, and I like Oklahoma's tackles. I'm not saying this is a massive need, but whenever you have an opportunity to go get a tackle like Zack Rice with the physical traits Zack Rice has, I think you certainly want to be going after a guy like Zack Rice. This is more of an example of the type of offensive tackle I would like to see Oklahoma go out and get. Not in the portal yet. Certainly could see him being in the portal in the next couple of days, I should say. So we'll keep an eye on Zack Rice. And you got to go to the defensive line next. And this is the next 4 guys that we have. We're all kind of Oklahoma targets out of the high school ranks. Kind of the similar conversation you had with Raleek Brown. When you are recruiting at such a high level like Oklahoma, you're going to have a lot of relationships with a lot of guys who might have not chosen your school out of high school. Can you circle back and land some of these guys? This is no doubt a popular name for Oklahoma fans. And that's DJ Hicks, that 5-star coming out in that 2023 class, 88 snaps for Texas A&M. It's a really loaded front seven. DJ Hicks, not many ties to Mike Elko either, so you could see him maybe hitting the portal with Jimbo Fisher gone, and more importantly, just a really loaded front seven for Texas A&M. Oklahoma was trending for DJ Hicks pretty much all the way up until he ended up committing to Texas A&M. This is a guy that I could certainly see hitting the transfer portal and Oklahoma kind of immediately being the front runner. And at the end of the day, it's been no secret what Brent Venables wants to do with this defense, and that is establish a really strong front seven. Was extremely aggressive in the 2024 class recruiting defensive linemen, was extremely aggressive in the transfer portal last cycle getting defensive linemen. He wants depth. He wants talent on that defensive line. DJ Hicks would be a phenomenal get for Texas or for Oklahoma. And you go to Texas A&M again. Why I'm focusing on Texas A&M for 2 reasons. One, Oklahoma was in a lot of recruiting battles with the Aggies to land some of these guys, but more importantly, you look at that Texas A&M front seven loaded with talent, and it's hard for these guys to get as many reps as they want. And so you represent an opportunity for them, who are very good football players, to come in and get a little bit more opportunity, get a little bit more burn. Gabriel Lindy, guy who is committed to Oklahoma, has only played 33 snaps in the 2023 season for Texas A&M, hasn't hit the portal yet, but like DJ Hicks, certainly another guy that I think could hit the transfer portal. This dude was an absolute freak show coming out of high school, would be a massive get for the Oklahoma Sooners if he does decide to hit the portal. Last guy that I wanted to, two more guys we got to talk about. The next guy in that 2023 class from Norman, Oklahoma, by Jobe, one of the more exciting prospects, and again, a coaching change not only at Texas A&M, but at Michigan State as well. A guy that Oklahoma was a leader in his recruitment coming out of high school, and a guy that this would be a really fun get because we knew coming out of high school, by Jobe needed a year. Even if he had committed to Oklahoma, probably was not going to play that much as a true freshman for the Sooners. You look at him now going into second years, all the way up to 230 pounds. By Jobe didn't get a ton of playing time for Michigan State, a guy with all the traits in the world. And if you want to sell, hey, you have a new coaching staff coming in, you can come back to Norman, Oklahoma, get developed by some of the best defensive line coaches in the country. This would be another really exciting target. And you're starting to see a lot of Michigan State players hit that transfer portal as the coaching change has taken place. I would be keeping an eye on by Jobe. And the last guy I want to talk about, and probably my favorite, and 24/7 Sports' favorite recruit in the transfer portal, I should say player in the transfer portal, Joey Slackman from the University of Pennsylvania, the #1 transfer portal player in this cycle so far. I'm guessing that'll change as we see more names in there. Former wrestler, 6'4", 300 pounds. If you go look up Joey Slackman, he carries 300 pounds like it's 200 pounds. This guy is rocked up, extremely strong, and very athletic. And having that former elite wrestler background, he knows how to use his hands. He knows how to use his leverage. In 28 games, he had 25 tackles for a loss the last 2 years. This guy can play at an extremely high level. I get it's a jump up in competition, but you look at how he's built. I am not nervous about this guy making that jump from the Ivy League competition all the way to that SEC competition. Joey Slackman, the most sought after defensive lineman right now out of the transfer portal, and for good reason. And I think Oklahoma, you have that continued idea of building that defensive line. Joey Slackman, I think, would be a really good get. Now, I looked at linebackers, I looked at defensive backs, and I kind of came to the conclusion that you want to be selective in the transfer portal. You just don't want to get bodies to get bodies. If you have areas where you want to increase your talent and depth, sure, and I kind of identified that at the wide receiver position and the defensive line position. But I like what Oklahoma has at the linebacker position and in that defensive back room, especially with the young talent, guys like Vickers, guys like Peyton Bowen. I don't necessarily think Oklahoma needs to go after and get multiple guys in the back end. If you want to add 1 or 2 guys for some talent and depth, I get it, but that's not necessarily the positions that I'm concerned about. You look at Oklahoma, you're probably going to lose a decent amount of guys on that defensive line, looking to kind of retool and reload that unit. That's a unit where you got to be deep in and you got to be talented in. Brent Venables has put a high emphasis on that. If there's a position group that you're going to see Oklahoma go after hard, it's going to be that defensive line position. Guys like Hicks, Gabriel, Lindy, by Jobe, Joey Slackman, really, really good options for the Sooners. That's the list that I have right now. Again, it's about to get really busy. We're going to be doing our best to cover all the roster moves we can for you guys. Again, appreciate y'all rocking with the boys. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.